Hey, are you a high achiever who struggles with perfectionism? Do you get stuck in the cycle of overthinking? Do you do everything for everyone else because you think otherwise it won't get done? Do you feel like you should come with a disclaimer? Hi, I'm anxious. Hey, I'm Katy. Full disclosure, I'm not a therapist, doctor, or mental health professional. I'm just a career mama who also struggles with anxiety. For me, anxiety reared its head at the most inconvenient times, when I wanted to be present with my family, at those high pressure business meetings, when I was laying in bed awake at night worrying instead of sleeping. I just wanted to relax and be able to have fun, and I know that you do too. What if you found tools to manage your anxiety? What if you knew how to enjoy life even though you are anxious? Look, it's time to put down that third cup of coffee and swap it for some lemon water. We're going to get control over anxiety so it can stop controlling you. Let's go, girl. Sweet soul, welcome to the Hi, I'm Anxious podcast. It is just sheer delight to be able to spend time with you. I appreciate my community so very, very much. And if you're not already a member of my free Facebook community, please come and join us. The link to join is in the show notes. It's an incredible place full of amazing, wonderful, high achieving women just like you and I. It's a place where we support one another, encourage one another, and sometimes collaborate. And I can't wait for what's next in the community this next year as I focus more on connections in my own life and in the group in the community that we've built around the podcast. So if you're not a member, please come join. I'd love to have you there. Again, the link to join the free Facebook group is in the show notes. Now, sweet anxious soul, I'm going to be expanding upon what I talked about in last week's episode. So if you didn't listen to episode 118, please go back there and listen to it in preparation for today's episode. I talked about how important connection is to ourselves in our lives and how important it is to be connected to yourself first in order to be connected well with others. And today I want to deepen that by giving you some specific ways that you can connect with yourself and talk about that just a little bit more. In that last episode 118, I talked about grounding and centering as means to get connected with yourself, and I want to go deeper into that. So, grounding, by its definition, is basic training or instruction. So, I think of grounding as like basic training or instruction in yourself, your own being. And I think that this is something that as anxious high achievers, we really struggle with doing. We don't make time for it. We don't put effort into it. And we tend to cater to other needs or things outside of ourselves before we're going to take care of ourselves. So I really want us to spend some time here focusing on this and thinking about ways that you can practically add this into your day-to-day life. I also mentioned centering. So I think about centering as coming to self or presence, which is necessary in order to get that training or instruction in the subject of yourself, getting to know yourself. I talked about the definition of grounding. So, both of these, I think, can be done in very similar or the same ways, and they all have to do with cultivating presence or awareness. And then there's some tools you can use to do that. So, oftentimes in grounding or centering practices, what you're going to be focusing on is the senses and mindfulness. And so think of some different ways that you can use to tap into your senses on a day-to-day basis. For example, first thing in the morning, maybe instead of grabbing your phone and checking what emails came in overnight or jumping right out of bed, maybe you take just a minute to lie there, maybe stretch a little bit, take some deep breaths, and feel what you're feeling in your body. Maybe you notice your neck is a little tight. You might have slept crooked, or maybe you notice you're really thirsty and you need to get up and take a drink of water. So I want you to think about how something like that could set your day off in the right trajectory in terms of paying attention to yourself and what you need. And that could take literally 30 seconds. It doesn't need to take long. So I want you to pay attention to that too, because I know as an anxious high achiever, you're probably likely to rush past stuff like that and go, I don't have time for that. I got to get up and I got to get the kids ready. I got to get to my morning workout class. I got to get onto my laptop and start some work right away. Whatever it is, take a moment for yourself to see what's going on inside of your body. Another way you could do this, I love having coffee in the morning. My favorite way of having coffee is a nice dark roast with a splash of heavy cream and a little bit of cinnamon. And the smell of that is just so delightful and comforting to me. So there are times where instead of just throwing it in my to go mug and slugging it as I run out the door, I take a minute to sit and really breathe it in, like take the lid off my cup or don't put the lid on yet, and just have a moment to smell that. Put my nose up to the cup and take a deep breath of that delicious, delightful smell of my morning coffee. So, I hope that this is giving you some ideas how you can bake into what you're doing already on a day to day basis some ways that you can ground and center by becoming present, becoming aware, and using your senses. Here's another example for you. The other day, I was driving home from work, and the sunset was just incredibly beautiful. And I was driving off into the sunset. And so, the amazing thing is, for my entire drive home, I was able to see this beautiful display of nature, indescribably beautiful colors, and the way that the light was slowly dimming. It was just amazing. As soon as I got home, I ran inside, wrapped my kids up in something warm, and took them outside and said, come, you have to come look at this. And I wasn't really adding much time, which I know is something that's going to stop you from engaging in these types of practices. I wasn't adding much time to my day. I was already driving home. I was already paying attention to what was going on around me as I drove. And I was able to also simultaneously take in this incredibly beautiful sight and just notice it for what it was. So instead of ruminating about my workday in my head, worrying about what I needed to do when I got home, I was taking the time to notice this beautiful sunset. So using that sense of sight. And then to add a bonus to it, I connected with my family over it. I drug them outside in the cold and made them come stand there and wonder at the sunset with me. So, dear sweet soul, I hope that this is giving you some ideas where in your own life you can find ways to make this work for yourself. Tap into what's going on inside of your own body with your own senses. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you smelling? What are you tasting? What is it that you're hearing? Oh, just think about all of these different ways you can use your senses to tap into you and yourself. And then I also want to expand on this topic too with a little discussion about grounding. So you've probably heard of grounding before, like literally going outside and putting your bare feet on the ground. I think that this practice is just so important, and I know that there's a number of ways you can do it. I'm just going to share a couple of my favorites. I really love going barefoot in the summer months. It works out well for me. We have a nice lawn with grass on it. So that's one of my favorite ways to ground. Just take off my shoes, go in the backyard, play with the kids, and walk around barefoot. I get a little exercise, I get a little movement, and I get some grounding. Or this might perhaps be my favorite way to ground of all. I love, 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 love going for long barefoot walks on the beach. So whenever we're at the beach, as long as it's safe to do it, there aren't rocks, etc., sharp objects, I go for a long barefoot walk on the beach, and just the feeling of the sand and the water underneath my feet is so calming and incredibly delightful. I love it so much. So I want you to think of maybe some ways that you can get some grounding in your life. This one might be a little bit harder for you to work in. I know that there are some tools. I can't say that I've tried any of them, but there are some tools you can use for grounding, like grounding mats or even sheets I've seen that provide grounding effects. So just think about creative ways that you can fit these grounding and centering techniques coming to presence and awareness, focusing on your senses throughout your day-to-day life and the stuff that you're already doing. Maybe just take a beat, take a pause, and take that notice. Because being able to be connected with yourself, sweet soul, is really just the seat of every single thing that we need in order to be able to live a fulfilled, successful, happy, healthy life full of the things that we want. And oftentimes doing that is something that we are going to be quick to neglect as anxious high achievers. So, sweet soul, I hope that this is helpful for you. I hope that if nothing else, it gave you a couple of ideas how you might sprinkle some grounding and centering activities throughout your day-to-day routines that you already have in place. And if you want to talk about this further with the group, come join. The link to join the free Facebook group is in the show note. We'd love to have you there where we can expand on this further and encourage one another and learn from one another. That's all I've got for you today, sweet soul. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really, really glad that you spend time with me here every week. And take care, and I can't wait to chat with you next week. Hey friend, thanks for being here. Did today's episode help you feel more in control of your anxiety? Did it inspire you to rest or relax? Or maybe it challenged you to really look at why anxiety is a part of your life? If so, I'd love to hear from you. If you would take 30 seconds, pause this episode, scroll down in Apple Podcasts, and leave me a review, I would be so grateful. See you next week. Disclaimer, I am not a medical professional, and this podcast is not providing therapy or medical treatment. Contents of the podcast are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider with your health questions and concerns.